Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Today I am gonna film my favorite books of the decade. So I am gonna take every single year of the decade, the 2010s, and say my favorite book within that year, because then we can see how my reading taste has changed, instead of just saying my top favorite books of the decade, because then it would just be my favorite books from the last few years. So yeah, I thought that would be more interesting, I guess. I do realize that in those years, of course, I read more than one book that I absolutely loved, but I will pick within that year just one book, and also just picking the one I remember the most and has affected my reading the most, I guess. Of course, in those years I read so many good books, so picking just one is really weird because I do realize that doesn't reflect all my reading, of course, but we are just doing it. So of course I just wanted to have a disclaimer that of course I enjoyed so many more books, and I don't know why I said the word of course like 20 times there. Starting off in 2009, there could be no other book than The Hunger Games. This was the first year that I read this book, and I think I only read it once since then, so actually I haven't reread this a billion times like some of my other favorite books. And I remember discovering this because it was super popular, of course. I read it in Norwegian because that's what I did back then, and I loved it. I remember I was so confused, for example, in the beginning that Katniss actually was not a boy, and I was also confused about like what Panem was and like how it worked, because I never really read a dystopia book before. And then this book led me into so much more dystopia, and just thinking how Hunger Games sprung up all these wide dystopia and basically created this whole new big popular genre. I read so many books because of this, and I just, looking back on this, it's just very weird, and it's weird that it's like 10 years ago. Definitely still a fave, not something that I would recommend to everyone, but a fave in a way that it changed me a lot, and it's a book series I had a lot of energy put in, and I loved it a lot. And it's also one of the few YA series, etc., that's so popular that everyone knows what it is. So like, if you talk to people about reading and maybe they don't read as much, which is fine, they always have heard about like The Hunger Games and Twilight, of course, but we weren't speaking about that right now. And I feel like there's nothing like in a community since Twilight and Hunger Games and Harry Potter, of course, as big as those, and hasn't been anything as big as those since then. And I love that everyone knew what The Hunger Games was, because I was alone in my reading world, and then suddenly this thing was a thing that for me had always been a thing. Of course though, The Hunger Games itself was new to me, but yeah, so yeah, it definitely has a big potent role in my reading life. I'm just looking at the other books that I really enjoyed in 2009. I'm just like, have to hold myself back to not talk about them as well. I'm pretty sure I said the wrong year for a moment somewhere in this video, but moving on, 2011. It's really hard because I can definitely see favorites there that I still hold really close to my heart, but two of those is dystopias, so they definitely sprung out of The Hunger Games. So I would go with The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I read it for the first time in 2011. I don't think I ever reread it, which is really strange for me because I keep rereading my favorites over and over the years. At the time when I read this, I don't think I realized the serious topics that it holds, like with depression and abuse, etc, etc. It's horrible. I don't think I realized even the seriousness of it. I also read it in English, and that was very difficult for me back then because it's not my first language. And I remember even asking at the bookstore if it would ever be Norwegian because I wanted to read it. I didn't believe in my English skills, and they were like, no, it won't come because it's not that popular to be released. And then later when the movie came, it was released in Norwegian. Anyway, not bitter at all. I don't think I understood everything that was happening, but later when watching the movie and like just reading about the book but not reading the book again, I have realized like what it's really about. But at the time, I just loved it because I thought it was just this sad, tragic story about this boy that was weird and didn't have any friends. And that was me. I guess I connected with Charlie, but also like, yeah, it's weird to have a book that at the time when I read it, I didn't really fully understand, but still considered it my favorite. It's weird how it is like that. 2012, when we thought the world was gonna end. Okay, what to choose? I would choose for this Game of Thrones because Game of Thrones was such a big part of my life for a really, really long time. When reading Game of Thrones for the first time, I read them in Norwegian, and that was because they were adult fantasy books, and I don't think I ever read, I think I probably read some adult fantasy books, I don't actually remember, but never so big as Game of Thrones. And I didn't believe in my English skills back then either, so I decided to do it in Norwegian, and I read the first part because they split in parts in 2012. So like I didn't actually read the whole book in that year, but it's not my fault they were split in parts. I love the books, like all of them. I have read the first 4 because I have just been waiting because sequels are not here yet, so I don't feel like there's any rush at the moment. And I just love the books and I love the show, and Game of Thrones has like been one of my favorite things since then because of the show and also like reading the books. So yeah, they definitely like had a big role in my life and me being a totally fangirl over the whole thing, even with all its issues, from how they chose to write certain things. And I don't just mean the end, I mean generally like some storylines that I don't know what they were doing. But yeah, Game of Thrones I reread actually after many years last year, and I absolutely loved it still. So then I read it in English for the first time and I absolutely loved it. One of my faves, even almost 10 years later last year when I read it again. So that says a lot. I didn't actually realize I read it in 2012. That seems a very long time ago. This is even harder. 2013 is hard to choose one because I read so many potent books for me back then. I would go with Clockwork Angel because going into that kind of YA fantasy, even though like I had been reading a lot of it outside that, but this was like a big series, and I read all of Cassandra Clare's books in the Shadowhunter Chronicles since then. So like looking back and reading Clockwork Angel, I had been reading The Mortal Instruments before this, by the way, but I would just remember becoming more and more of a fangirl, and this was the point where like I really fell in love with Cassandra Clare's works because I did enjoy The Mortal Instruments, but I loved their Infernal Devices so much more. And I remember just like binging the whole series within a month. It's impressive for me because I used a really long time finishing up series, but I just couldn't wait, so I just binged the whole thing and I loved it. I reread this actually last year as well, the sequel series that is coming this year very soon, and I still love it a lot. Not as much as back then, but still a lot. So just going into that kind of genre, like going away more from paranormal dystopia books because of Twilight and Hunger Games, and going into like urban fantasy or like the girl finding out that she has powers fantasy, blah blah blah. It's definitely like a thing, and of course other reads here and there because I'm not talking about all of them, obviously. Also, shout out in 2013 when I read Looking for Alaska. I was between those two if I was going to choose one for 2013. Oh my god. 2014 was the year when it went down. By down, I mean I only read like 26 books that year, which is like my lowest year in the last 10 years. It's in between 2 books again, but I think I would pick Fangirl. I still love Rainbow Rowell so much, and this is how characters from Carry On are introduced, which is one of my all-time favorite books. Rainbow Rowell has done her mistakes, but so has lots of other authors, and I still do enjoy her books. I just wanted to say that I am aware. I think like I cried like 5 million times reading it because I for some reason really related to Kath, the main character, who has this very intense anxiety, and I just related so much with it, which is for me doesn't actually make any sense when I think about it now, because like my anxiety has like so different from her, but I just felt it so in my heart and I just cried like a baby. And also like I loved reading about like fandom things, and it's still one of my faves, but I only read it that once, so I don't actually know how I would feel about it now. And again, I just need to give a shout out for this year to also The Book Thief, which I absolutely loved. This year I read really slowly, so I'm pretty sure I used like 3 months on The Book Thief or something, and it was so good, but in such a different genre, which is why I felt like mentioning it, because yeah. 2015, I glanced over and already know what I'm going to talk about because like there is no doubt we have The Final Empire. It's from book 1 by Brandon Sanderson, which is like the book I would say is my all-time fave, which away from like my childhood faves. I reread this last year as well. I don't know what happened last year. Apparently I reread a lot of my faves. It was still amazing and I just love it so much. This was my first Brandon Sanderson book, and since I have read much more. He's just a marvelous writer, so original with his ideas and plots, and writing is amazing. I just love his writing and his book so much. I didn't realize it's that long ago since I first read Mistborn, and the ironic thing is that I think I picked it up because I joined this random book club at Goodreads that is now not in function, and I was just, I want to join, and then I picked this up because of it. And I remember I had seen his book in his bookstore so many times, and I was just like, they have pretty covers. And then I picked it up and I just didn't understand anything. Like the first 150 pages, I had no idea what was going on. I thought it was my English actually, because it was still not as, I guess, fluent as I am now. 2015 was also the year I started this channel, so it was clearly the year that's wow. Again though, a shout out to Carry On, which I read for the first time in this year because it was released this year and it's still one of my faves. Mistborn just opened this door to other things I feel like more out of fantasy, but I feel like I would have read those anyways, but this was like my first big one, I guess. I mean, I had already read Game of Thrones. 2016 was my comeback into reading because I read 30 in 2015 and 26 in 2014, and in 2016 I was coming back and whoa, I rated actually a lot of books 5 stars, and how do I even pick? I think I would go with Vicious by V.E. Schwab, which is an adult fantasy as well. I remember I even buddy-read it with my friend. I think I even have a horrible review up on my channel of it, and I remember I just loved it completely. It's like full of villains and stuff, and writing was just so good. We even got a sequel later, which I don't love as much, but still was super good. So also introduced me to V.E. Schwab, unless I read A Darker Shade before that, I don't actually remember. But in that year it introduced me to V.E. Schwab, which is one of my favorite authors of all time. So in 2017, there is no doubt that my favorite was An Amber in the Ashes by Sabbath Hair. I did read other books that I really enjoyed that year, also some rereads, etc. But this one just stood out above everything, and I remember even like making a video where I talked about like my reading year, and this one I just stood there and raved about. It's still one of my all-time favorite books, and I had heard about this for like such a long time, and reading it I didn't expect it to be everything. I still haven't finished the 3rd book, but I read the 2nd book and it was everything as well. It is such a good series and I want to reread it obviously because clearly that's what I do with my faves, but it was just so good, and I said I still consider it everything, so that is good. Oh no, in 2018 I think I even made like my favorite books of the year video, but if I was gonna pick one, like from enjoyment, it would be A Court of Mist and Fury, but I think I would go with actually Royal Assassin, which is the 2nd book in the first series trilogy. And when the year before that I had read the 1st book, I liked it a lot, I enjoyed it, but I still looked upon it as a bit like a slow but delicious good adult fantasy. In the 2nd book, I just appreciated everything much more. The writing, I just realized it's everything, and also like all the plots and the things that happened just like shocked me out of my pants. And in 2019 I finished the series off and it's one of my faves. So like the 2nd book is still my favorite, and it was everything. I'm still not over the whole ordeal of everything that happened. Royal Assassin, I think we can see a pattern here, but going for the last year of the 2010s, this video is also like a mess, but what do you expect? It will be no other than Strange the Dreamer, of course, because I've been talking about this book all last year. I read it twice in 2019, so that says everything. And it's just amazing. Okay, I just can't get over how beautiful it is, together with Muse of Nightmares, because I couldn't pick a fave between the two because they are a couple, they belong together. I just read so many good books in 2019, but Strange the Dreamer, just like I read in the beginning of the year, I finished it off the year with reading it again or listening to it, and it was still everything. If I was gonna like have favorite books of the decade and just like talking about my faves on the top, it would just be me talking about Strange the Dreamer for like a billion years. That's it for that decade, and you do see the pattern. It started off with dystopia and like contemporary, and I still have contemporary as my faves, and also and then I went to adult fantasy and more YA fantasy, of course. It's like my favorite genres, but if you do watch this channel, you know I read very various things sometimes because I never want to put myself in a box, but like clearly my faves are there. This was not as like, what would I say? I thought it would be more like, oh my god, I really changed my reading tastes in the last 10 years. I would say that the last 10 years have definitely shaped my reading tastes because I was in my teens and now I'm in my 20s. Obviously it is the years that has shaped me as a person because that's when you grow into who you're gonna be. Of course you do that all your life, but I have found my spots of what I'm comfortable with and know what I like. It was not that shocking because like I would read The Hunger Games. I am actually going to reread The Hunger Games this year as well, and I would read it and I would probably think the same of it as I would think back then. Not like exactly the same, but I think I will love it as much. So like it says a lot that you think you change but you also don't, but you also do. The only thing like I know I changed is that I think more about what I read and stuff, but like there's just so much. The market has changed so much. It's so big. You always find something these days of everything compared to back then when there was just Hunger Games and all the other things that looked like Hunger Games. I think if I had talked more about like more than one favorite each year, you would see just how much similarities I had read, but I still thought this could be interesting, I guess. I also realized this video is super late, but it's not my fault that no one leaves the house so I can film, okay? So I think that's it for this video. I know that it was maybe a bit strange. I think it didn't go as I expected it to. I expected it to be much more shocking, but apparently I'm just predictable. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing what influenced my reading over the years, and see me now. I will make a new one of these in 2030 to see. Yeah, it will probably be the same kind of books, let's be real. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. You will see me soon in a new video, and goodbye!